Yeah.
Tell you.
Oh, yeah.
Have you been to the career?
All right, everybody, hello.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for joining us tonight at Left Bank Books.
I have a photo.
Tonight, we are so excited to present St. Louis educator and lifelong collector of Black historical memorabilia, Calvin Riley. Calvin will be discussing his fascinating and vital new book, Black St. Louis. So some notes before we begin. Tonight's event is only possible because of your support. So when you shop at Left Bank Books, your money goes directly into your local economy. It helps writers get the support they deserve and allows us to produce events such as this. So thank you all so much for shopping local and supporting this event. I also want to extend a welcome to our virtual audience tonight. Thank you for joining us from afar. You can order copies of tonight's book on our website, left-bank.com, and participate in the Q&A by leaving your question as a comment on YouTube there. So we have a fantastic calendar of events coming up. Of note, next week, February 10th, we are delighted to welcome Bonnie Jo Campbell, Queen of Rural Noir, who will be returning with her new book, The Waters, a fierce, mesmerizing novel about exceptional women and the soul of a small town. And on February 29th, award-winning and celebrated author Philip B. Williams will be here to discuss his highly anticipated new magical historical novel, Hours. Set over the course of 4 decades and steeped in a rich tradition of American literature informed by Black surrealism, mythology, and spirituality, Ours is a mesmerizing epic that reimagines the past to explore the true nature of freedom. A full list of all of our upcoming events, featuring more names such as Nnedi Okorafor, Curtis Chin, Amy Spalding, and many more, can be found on our website. There's sure to be something for readers of all ages, so check us out there. So for tonight's event, we are delighted to be joined by Calvin Riley. Calvin is an educator, and he and his wife, Calra Riley, are lifelong collectors of Black memorabilia dating back 250 years. Their 40-year collection was used to open the George B. Vashon Museum of African American History, telling the stories and events of their experience in the United States and how African Americans have progressed over many decades. As they say, the world must not be allowed to forget the injustices done to Black Americans. Calvin's new book, Black St. Louis, explores the rich and inspiring history of African Americans in St. Louis, from the city's founding as a French fur trading post to the Spanish colonial era to the new millennium. Together with author Nini Harris, Calvin highlights great figures who showed leadership, incredible innovation, and courage despite the injustices that they faced. Black St. Louis covers more than 250 years of history to tell the stories of these extraordinary people who paved the way for the St. Louis we know today. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Calvin Riley.
I feel like I'm back in the classroom. That's attractive. But anyway, thank you all for coming, and thanks for having me here at Left Bank Books. First, I want to talk about how I got in this, tell you a little bit about me. I'm a retired educator. I started my teaching career in University City School District, where I did my student teaching, and I taught in U City for just a short time because Texas was having that oil crisis down there, and they came to St. Louis and offered us double our salaries to go and teach in Texas. So I left U City and went to Dallas and taught in Dallas for a number of years, make a lot more money. And then my mother got ill, and then I made a phone call to a couple of friends of mine, came back, and started working with St. Louis Public Schools. It was opening up a new school at that time, Gateway on Jefferson, and I was Barbara Harvey. She was a good friend of mine. She said, "I want the best, so can you come?" And I said, "Well, I guess I will move back to St. Louis." So I came on back. And so as I was teaching, I was also an antique dealer. I used to buy and sell antiques. I started at the Kill Auditorium. And I had a couple I was buying just junk, pretty much. And this guy, Ed Orchard, came into my booth, and he bought a couple of dolls from me. He asked me how much they were, and I told him, I say, they're $100 for each, and he bought them. I paid about $10 for them at a garage sale. Then he asked me, he said, "You know what they are?" And I said, "No." He told me they were Vardy White dollars made by a guy by the name of San Francisco Vargas in Louisiana. They were made of beeswax, made in the 1890s. At that time, they worth about 1,000 apiece. Then he asked me, did I know what black memorabilia was? And I told him no. And so he invited me to his home. He lived in Ladue. Matter of fact, he's still living. He's, I think he's 98 years old now. And he's still living. And I went to his home and I saw a collection of black memorabilia that changed my life. That's when I started collecting. But also, as a collector, I started buying and selling it. So I was traveling all over the East and West Coast, setting up at black memorabilia shows, selling black memorabilia. But I would keep the local stuff, St. Louis history. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I kept it. I did not sell that kind of stuff, and so I kept it. So back in 2006, I was cleaning out a house on West Bell, and then in the basement there were a couple of trunks, and we started seeing Vashon, and I didn't know what it was. My wife, she said, "One of these got anything to do with Vashon High School?" And I said, "I don't know." So we did a little research and found out that we was cleaning out the Vashon family home. And matter of fact, the lady that lived there, Miss Joan Gossam, she taught at Patrick Henry School, where I went from like 3rd grade up to 8th grade. She taught there about 40 years, but I didn't know her there. But my sister and brother knew her, and she was Mr. Vashon's granddaughter. So anyway, I took the collection over to the Missouri History Museum, and they looked at it and they told me that was the greatest find ever to have an African American family artifacts together dating back 250 years. It's very, very rare. And so my friend Norman Parrish worked for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. He's a reporter. He said, "This is news. Let me put this in the newspaper for you." And he did. And he put it in the newspaper. And a couple of days after it published, he called me and said, "There are people all over the country want to talk to me about the Vashon artifacts. May he give out my number?" And I said, "Yes." And he did. It was a Smithsonian in Pittsburgh where the Vashons are from. They was interested in buying the artifacts. Overland University, where Mr. Vashon was the first African American to graduate in the 1840s. They also wanted to buy the artifacts. Clark University in Atlanta also called me. I think it was a couple other collectors at the university. Well, the Smithsonian came here to St. Louis to see the collection. And Overland University also flew here to see the collection. And actually Overland only wanted the artifacts of Mr. George Vashon. He didn't want the entire family. So anyway, I had made a deal with the Smithsonian. Then I got a call from the Mountain City Bar, a lawyers group here in St. Louis, and they told me, they said, "We hear you're going to sell the Vashon artifacts." And I said, "Yes." They said, "We think you should keep them in St. Louis because the Vashon family had done so much here, and you can think about the money, you can think about the history." And that's when my wife said, "Why don't you open a museum?" I never thought about a museum because I had no museum experience. And so one day we was on St. Louis Avenue. My wife looked at a building.
What's her name?
Carol, she said right here.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry.
Oh, you were there for the opening of the museum?
I own a museum.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was there.
Okay, I remember
And
that.
I have a photo of Percy Green
Right, yeah, he was there. He was
Yeah,
speaking.
okay,
Right, he was.
everybody else
and Brenda Moore.
Right,
Better mark, yeah, that's right.
yes, they were. Okay, so anyway, my wife, she told me, she looked at the building and said, "I'll make a nice museum." So the guy, a friend of mine, he said, "Well, I know who owns it. He wants to sell it." So he got me in touch with the owner. And we made a deal and I bought it. I retired from St. Louis Public Schools and started rehabbing the building. I think we worked on it maybe a year and a half to 2 years before we got it open. And cause St. Louis City kept telling me I got to do this and I got to do that. Then they came back. Last thing they made me put up they said, well, you got to have a handicap ramp. And so I went and did the handicap ramp. We built that, and then I did it. It was fine. They gave me an occupancy permit to open. And that was over 10 years ago. Now, what we do at the George Vashon Museum, I collect artifacts of people in St. Louis who were history makers, who did great things. And a lot of them, actually, if I had not gotten the artifacts, it would have gone into a dumpster. And that's which is sad. And but anyway, so that's what I do. And I talk about Mr. Vashon because a lot of people in St. Louis do not know who the Vashons are. And even people at Vashon High School, the Vashon alumni, they come and they say, well, they never told us about Mr. Vashon. But George Vashon was the first African American to graduate from Open University of Ohio as a lawyer during the 1840s. He graduated, but he could not practice law because he was black. So he traveled the country trying to find work. He's one of the founders of Howard University. He set up their law school. That's why Howard bring students out here during the summer sometime to learn about Mr. Vashon. And his sister died. He adopted her 4 children. Then he asked Howard for more money. They could not afford him. And then he left Howard, went to New York, and became the first black attorney in the state of New York. Then he left New York and went to Alcorn, Mississippi, where he was teaching at the University of Alcorn. He caught yellow fever. He died. He's buried on their campus. Well, Missouri used to have a law where it was illegal to teach blacks how to read or write. And so eventually they abolished that law where blacks could go to school. So they had schools like Color School No. 1, 10, all that. And the kids had white teachers who didn't want to teach them. The St. Louis Board of Education had to threaten them with their jobs to go into the classrooms to teach the black children. So the parents started protesting to get black teachers for role models. So Vashon, he moved his family here about 1880, became principal of Delaney School. He also became principal of Color School No. 10, which later became Vashon Elementary. Susan Vashon, she started the Book Lover Club here for black women, and also Federation of Color Women Club. She started that. She was the first president there. Emma Vashon was the first graduate of Sumner High School. She graduated in 1885. She and a guy by the name of John Pope. We have her high school diploma hanging on the wall at the museum. And then, so the Vashons was some of the premier black educators here in St. Louis. Even Emma, she taught at Sumner. And then her husband, Andrew Gossam, he came here to St. Louis from Mississippi with the Vashons. And he married Emma, and where they had 5 children. And he also taught at Sumner, and he was one of the teachers he was a leading teacher to go over to help build Vashon. And that's why it was a long time before I knew why people would say in St. Louis, what school did you go to? What high school did you attend? And I didn't understand that until a few years ago, actually. But they're really close connected because all the teachers who was at Vashon, helped open up Vashon, came from Sumner. Yeah, all of them did, because they couldn't get jobs anyplace else. That's why the kids got such a fantastic education here, because most of the teachers had PhDs, they had doctorates and masters, and they could not get jobs across the country. So a lot of them would come to St. Louis to teach, and that's amazing what they were going through despite segregation, and it becomes successful. And so those kind of things, we have at the Vashon Museum. Let me see some of the collection that I got there. I got the Tuskegee Airmen, the Pullman Porters, Dr. Lincoln Dogood. And a lot of people don't know, I'll be talking about that in a few minutes when I get to that Black St. Louis book, where the Pullman Porters worked the Underground Railroad. But they would go in the South on the plantations because blacks cannot read or write. And they served as the news media for people on the plantations. And they would get them out when they started that migration. The Pullman Porter would hide people behind their luggage on trains and bring them north. They would come in, a lot of them came to St. Louis, they would go to Ohio, they go to Chicago, they go to Detroit. So the Pullman Porters did that. They served that Underground Railroad for many, many years without people knowing what they were doing. Because, matter of fact, one of my wife's uncles, he just passed away a couple of years ago, but he was telling us how he and his sister got to St. Louis. And they were on the train, and they was hidden behind some luggage. And then he said, when I guess they get somewhere in Memphis or somewhere, they stopped and they stayed at a house overnight. And then next morning, they took them and brought them to St. Louis. That's how he said they got to St. Louis. Behind that luggage on the trains off the plantation. Because he says his parents sent he and his sister, then later the mother and father came to St. Louis. Okay. So that's what I do at the Vashon Museum now. As a result, as going along, Nene Harris, good friend of mine, she will come to the museum bringing tours. She always brings tours down to St. Louis Place, walking tours, and she brought tours to the museum. And she said, "You need to do a book." And I said, "I don't want to do a book." You know what I mean? And so she said, "Yeah, you need to do a book because there's a lot of history here and a lot of history in St. Louis." And so she actually it took her a couple of years to convince me to do a book. And, and so she said, "I'll help you do the research." I said, "Okay." So we started doing the research, and that's how Black St. Louis came about. And anyway, so now I'm glad I did it, because I was on the radio earlier today talking about that, and they asked me, was I glad that I did this book? And I said, yes. I said it needed to be done because nobody had done a book like that with that much history in St. Louis. A lot of people always say, well, African American history vanished. But no, doing the research, all you do is look for it, it's there. All you do is look for it, do research. It's all there. There are records you have to dig.
It's the truth.
It's there.
It's there.
People that were here many, many years ago who lived in this area. And even I've searched my family out. My full-blooded Cherokee Indian. And I remember,
Oh, my goodness.
and my grandmother was also a Cherokee Indian because I remember I used to go spend summer with my grandmother.
What his father?
I hear it.
Oh, him. Oh, you're not him. Okay.
Well, wait. My grandmother would tell me Indian stories, and I remember the last time I visited with her, she took me fishing, and I remember she killed a snake with a fishing pole.
Oh, she was good.
Yeah, and so.
And what I really want to know, when you have children that are able to help, they don't know what helping things are. And that my grandmother and my grandfather, they would always take them out in the yard. And they just, woo, pretty soon I was about ready to run out.
Right.
And I almost did. And it just seems to that, at that point, that there things happen that they're there.
Right. Yeah.
And what are you going to do with them when it's bad?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sometimes it gets awful.
Okay. So anyway, so Black St. Louis covers about 250 years of history in St. Louis. It's there. We started with the St. Louis being created. I got my PowerPoint here. I didn't set it up, but I got it here. As a trading post and fur trading post like Pierre Leclerc and August Shoto. They founded St. Louis around in the 1700 about it. About 1764, they started offering land to people. So Miss Frechette, Jeanette Frechette, she was a former slave from Illinois. She had been set free, and she came to St. Louis and she met her husband, who was a blacksmith, and they got married, and it was so the show shows and they offered land, started offering free land to people. So they had land downtown, right where the Gateway Arch is sitting.
Really?
Yeah, that's where they were, and that's where they a lot of they had farms on the riverfront, black families along that riverfront. That's where they started having black families here. Yeah, she had been free from Cahokia, Illinois, and so anyway, that after that, they get my PowerPoint here. Okay, we talked about that. Then we get into talking about how a lot of the French were bringing the slaves over. Some were free, and then a lot of them were still in slavery because downtown they had a slave room downtown where the Bush Stadium is sitting right now. It's built right on top of it, and so we kind of figure it out. That's where it has to be. So anyway, but people they still weren't free. They, even though they had been slaves and people saying they're free, they still was not being accepted by the majority. And so, you know, it's what they had, how they were living at during that time. And so anyway, black, my PowerPoint is right, I can do it without it. So Black St. Louis covered the history of St. Louis from that period, going all up to the turn of the century when the Vashons started teaching here, and blacks started going to school, and they still, blacks could not buy land. They don't want to be landowners. Then eventually they created places like the Ville and other some neighborhoods like the Town, all those kind of neighborhoods where blacks could live. And even where the Purinago sits, that's land that they took away from white families, and they because they always get rid of areas where
Pruitt-Igoe was built for white and black families, but 1 year after they moved in, all the white families moved out.
I know, yeah, right.
South City.
That's so correct, yeah.
Let's save our questions and comments toward the end. Mr. Owen mentioned he'd be happy to answer those at that time. So.
Yes, Grizzly love.
Yeah, you're right. He's correct. Purinago, there were a lot of white families lived in Purinago. One of my friends, he said he lived in Purinago when he was young, and so they but those areas like Mill Creek and all those, when the downtown where the arch where black family lived, right by Union Station, they had row houses, and but the problem was they didn't have indoor toilets, and so that's how they was able to say, well, we need to tear this down, and they were told the alderman Mill Creek that at that time that they were gonna make it better for blacks.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and he believed them, and but he didn't know they were talking about housing projects, and that's what they was talking about. And so they vanished clean out of downtown St. Louis, and there's no history that blacks live down there. I mean, Highway 70 is they used to clean all that out. That's where Anna Malone was. Anna Malone was at 2223 Market Street. And so when she came to St. Louis, and all that stuff just vanished and cleaned and cleaned away. So that's what happens to a lot of the black communities. Then we talk about integration. Integration, a lot of older people, I've interviewed a lot of older black people. They feel like integration hurt black Americans in a way because they had the veil. The veil where all the African Americans, they had doctors, they had lawyers, they had businesses, they had barbers, they had funeral homes. And so when they was when integration came, where they was allowed to move out, they just left because they feel like it was best to live around whites or in other areas. The first street they allowed blacks to move on in St. Louis was Cook Avenue. And that's it was the first street that they were allowed to move on. And that I'm told that the whites came down there and tried to threaten them, and they one of the guys, he shot up in the air with a gun. He said to frighten them away. But that was the first street that blacks were allowed to move on out of segregated areas in St. Louis was Cook Avenue. And so so that they had the Ville, and my wife here, she grew up in the Ville, and that's where they all lived. They were self-sufficient. They had their store, they had cleaner, they had everything in those communities. They had in the same county, they had Meacham Park, same way. They were self-sufficient. Then they Kinlock, they had Kinlock out there. I remember going to Kinlock when I was young.
Yeah.
There was all kinds of stores out there in Kinlock. I used to know a lot of families out there. A lot of people don't know where Lemon Field is sitting. That was part of Kinlock. It's been that first building for the airport. That was part of Kinlock. It's been taken away. So that's usually what happens to black communities all over the country, not just in St. Louis. And those are some of the things that we talk about in Black St. Louis. And we also cover, in Black St. Louis, we cover a lot of the history makers, people who made history here in St. Louis that will be forgotten. Like one of my college professors, Dr. Lincoln Newgood. Dr. Newgood came from Virginia, and he was the first African American to graduate from Cornell University with a master's and a doctorate. And Dr. Newgood could pass for white, and he would tell us stories of his experiences. And then when he came here, his brother was one of the first black judges here in St. Louis, and Dr. Newgood said a company wanted to hire him, but he had to pass for white. He could not tell nobody he was black. He could not hire anybody black. And he chose not to do that and opened his own lab at 1215 South Jefferson in the old animal hospital, where he was there 40 plus years making his own products. He's the first one to make hand cleanser to get grease off your hand when you clean, work on cars. And he said a company, I'm not gonna say the name of the company, but he said a company kept calling him until they got the formula and they put out goop. And he said he never got credit for it. I'm not making that up. I got videos of that he did at the Missouri History Museum with Gwen Moore, where he's talking about that, how he was cheated out of that. He said that I think he didn't trust anybody else. But Dr. Good was brilliant. He was smart. And he sold his products all over the country, actually. And I was proud to have him as a professor, even though I only got a C out of his class. But, you know, it was a C that I was glad to get because he was rough. But anyway, so Jordan Chambers. A lot of people don't know who Jordan Chambers was. Jordan Chambers was known as the first black mayor of St. Louis, but he never held political office. He's a mortician. He owned Club Riviera, and he used it for a political base. So in the 1930s, he wanted the blacks to become Democrats. They were Republicans because they voted for Roosevelt. Lincoln. And so they became Democrats, and they voted in for Mr. Bernard Dinkerman for mayor of the city of St. Louis. And Mr. Dinkerman told Jordan Chambers that he was going to get blacks more porter jobs at City Hall. But Jordan Chambers told him that's not what I want. He wanted black clerks. He wanted more black police officers.
Right.
You know, it was 1940s. The police officers could not wear uniforms, and black police officers could not wear uniforms in St. Louis. They had black police officers since the 1890s, but they were not allowed to wear a police uniform until Mr. Bernard Dinkerman became mayor, where he allowed the black officers to wear a uniform. And we have some of the first officers who wore uniforms on display in the museum. And someone was telling us the black men were proud to see black men in police uniforms. And even when Mr. Dinkerman did that, a lot of the white officers, they quit the force because they didn't want to be along black officers in the police uniforms. And so that's some of the changes that was coming about early for the blacks in St. Louis when they were allowed to wear a uniform. And we have Oscar Foreman, his artifacts. He's one of the first black officers to wear a uniform. His artifacts are on display at the museum.
Really?
And he was on the major case squad. He saw a lot of cases. He saw the Anheuser-Busch case where the Bush family had a missing child. He saw that case. The black bank up on Union, they had a indoor robbery. He saw that case because it was an indoor inside job. 905 liquor stores had a robbery. He saw that case because it was also an inside job. So they say he solved a lot of important cases when he was a police officer. And so those are some of the things, people that we have at the museum. We have Anna Malone. You know, she was one of the first black female millionaire in St. Louis, and she made a lot of changes.
She did.
Yeah, she did.
My grandmother and her helped with each other.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful.
Yeah, she
It really was.
she went over to Barnes Hospital
She,
and asked
yeah.
Barnes why the black people had to be in the basement, and they moved the black people up to the first floor out of the basement.
And they said they
Ma'am,
were
let's
not-
please
they
keep
were
our
not
stories and
going
questions to the end.
Okay.
We're here to listen to Mr. Riley. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, so they moved him up, and so when Anne Malone was getting divorced, her husband Aaron Malone divorced her. They got behind, helped him get her out of St. Louis, and she could only come to St. Louis on Saturday and Sunday. She always came back for the May Day parade, and if she came back, she had to be gone by Monday morning. She wasn't. She would get arrested for trespassing.
Right.
That's kind of laws they made keep her out of St. Louis because of her power. She had a lot of power here, and she was one of 5 people in St. Louis driving a Rolls Royce, and I guess they didn't like that. So
She did.
yeah.
She's probably out there right now.
Yeah. So anyway, that's pretty much what we talk about in Black St. Louis is a history. This here is, everybody in here, if you don't have the book, you should get it, because no one, there have been books written about Black history, but no one had written a book like that, that in depth, talking about the history makers in St. Louis and what they had accomplished. And we really did a lot of research and digging to put this book together. And so I know I'm talking, I'm gonna check it out, okay, I won't talk too much longer. But anyway, I take any questions that you may have, yeah.
So I just moved to St. Louis, but when I was in college, I took this class on opera, and Grace Brumberg.
Yeah.
Is she from she graduated from Sumner? Or
She is.
She graduated from Beaumont.
She graduated from Sumner.
Yeah, I love her, man. I love her.
Yeah, she's mentioned in the book.
I know. I heard you on NPR the other day.
Okay, yeah.
I listen.
Yeah, she mentioned she did a lot of great things, and but most of her work was done overseas. You know,
Germany.
yeah, and a lot of people like don't know why a lot of blacks they didn't have to deal with the racism, and they felt like it was free over there. That's why they moved overseas. Even a lot of the black soldiers, you don't hear people talking about that.
Right.
But during World War II, a lot of the black soldiers did not come back. They stayed over there because they had family, had kids by some young girls over there, so they didn't want to leave them. And so they didn't want to come back to the United States, so they stayed over there and raised families.
Like Josephine Baker, she was from St. Louis too.
She
I
stayed
thought
over
so.
there. Yeah, she was.
I know my shit. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know.
Really?
Yeah, St. Louis. Yeah, St. Louis. We had a lot of
I'm from New York.
people with a lot of talent came out of St. Louis. A lot of them, and we mentioned them in the book. Okay. And other questions?
What do you think about living here?
I hear you.
What are you doing now to, that you can get all the stuff you want?
What am I doing? What now?
Can't help it. Getting up with, I'm just asking is, how do you like this area?
This area here,
Yeah.
the West End.
Yeah,
I live in the West End.
yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
What? Which one?
I live in Central West End here. I live about 5 minutes from here.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what are you doing with it?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I bought a house here in the West End years ago,
Well, yeah,
and so I enjoy it. I like the neighborhood.
yeah. They are in St. Louis.
Yeah.
They're not
Yes.
usually.
Can you tell us some of the things you have in your museum that you value as rare items that speak of African American culture?
Okay, some of the most rare items, the most rarest item in the Vashon family collection. I don't have them out on display because they're so rare. But anyway, I have letters from William Lloyd Garrison, who wrote Mr. Vashon. Mr. Vashon worked in the Underground Railroad, and he and William Lloyd Garrison was very good friends. And so I have, I think, 5 letters that original letter that he written to Mr. Vashon. I have Jordan Chambers artifacts. He was known as the first black mayor of St. Louis, but he wasn't a mayor. He was a mortician and a businessman, but he was just concerned about getting things done for African Americans in St. Louis. And when in the Jet magazine, when he died, I think he died in '62. His estate was worth over $60,000 when he died. We have J.B. Jet Banks. J.B. Jet Banks was one of our senators.
Very flamboyant.
Yeah, flamboyant. Yeah, he was. We have his artifacts on display.
Red and
Yeah, he never went to a meeting with the same suit on. If he had 5 meetings in a day, he's sitting in 5 different suits. Yeah, he was something. Yeah.
So this is a beautiful book, and it looked like it took many hours to put together. And how were you able to finance it? Did you get grants, or is this just all volunteers?
No, Reading Press, the book company financed it. Yeah, they financed it. That's who did it. Yeah, he's a good guy because he kept talking to me. He said you should do a book and all that. So he was glad for me to do that book. He financed it. They did. Yeah. Yeah. It took us 3 years to put that together.
Shows.
How far back does your history go at your museum?
To the 1700s.
1700.
Yeah, I got Reverend Thomas Paul. I got a silk photograph of Reverend Thomas Paul Reverend Thomas Paul started the first Baptist church in the United States in Boston for black people. And that was Susan Paul's grandfather. And I got a silk photograph of him from the 1700s. That was in the Vashon artifacts. So, and then I have slave documents going back, original slave documents listing slaves for sale. Some of them got them with animals on listed. I have slave narrators. Actually, slave narrators that was given to me from I think a professor. Some professor had him who died. He was an officer professor, and his great grandkids are friends of mine. So they found all these original slave narrators in his home, and they donated them to the museum. And there's actually interviews of slaves talking about how it was when they were slaves. We have those. Yeah.
So is it set up like the Griot Museum or?
Well,
like
it's
that,
set up a little different. It's similar, but we have a lot of different rooms, and we have a big room, with a lot of different collections in there. But all our collections are from St. Louis families. We don't have anything. I don't put anything, no copies. Everything is original, and we have uniform. I have one of the first black Marines, Dr. Wilson. He was a Montford Pratt Marine, and he said when he pulled into Pearl Harbor, everything was on fire. And he said when the Japanese surrendered, they told him to throw the weapons in the sea. But he brought one of the Japanese rifles back as a souvenir. He sold it to him right before he passed away.
Japanese bayonet.
I hear you.
Japanese bayonet.
Yeah, he would have bayonet on it, yeah. But he brought it back from Pearl Harbor. So we have things like that, you know what I mean? I have KKK outfits. And because a lot of my friends, my white friends who do estate sales, they used to ask me, they said, we found some KKK stuff. Do you want that? First I would say no. And then they kept on saying, if you don't take it, we're gonna throw it away. We're not gonna sell it. And so I did some research, searched out a museum called a museum in Memphis. They had a KKK exhibit. I checked with Washington, D.C. They had a KKK exhibit, so I started taking that. So I got about, I don't have mine on display. I just got one out on display, but I have for men, women, and children. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you happen to have anything on Sumner students?
I have a lot of Sumner memorabilia because yes.
Do you happen to have anything on Victoria Haley?
Victoria Haley, I don't know. I could, but I have, because we clean our homes, and I got a lot of old early Sumner memorabilia. I don't know.
This was like back in the 1890s.
Mhm.
She was a black suffragist that was fighting for the vote for black women.
Right. Well, I do have some women's suffrage. I have a women's suffrage display there where they had the women's suffrage movement in New York, where the women were marching, and the black women marched in that march, but it was at the back. Mary Bethune was also, she marched in that march for the women's suffrage movement. Then I have a book, a poll tax book from Kansas City. I think it's dated 1942, and got people listed in there. I paid a poll tax in order to vote. Also, I got poll tax receipts, a lot of original poll tax receipts that I found in a Pullman Porterhouse in U City. And so and that was his fathers and grandfathers. So I do have a women's suffrage movement display.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
Do you happen to have anything on Madam C.J. Walker?
Yes, I do. Yeah. She, a lot of people say she was the first black female millionaire, but it wasn't. It was Anne Malone. She was actually an Anne Malone student. Anne Malone trained her. And she actually, the word is she stole her products and made her own. And after that, she and Anne Malone didn't speak anymore. And, but, she did become a millionaire, but, Anne Malone trained her.
This play, it's about Victoria Halley and the Harlem Hellfighters.
Right,
And there's going to be a play about that.
right. I've heard of it. I did hear, I did hear that.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I just would like to see the type of styles that they wore and any information that.
The clothing.
The clothing.
Oh, okay, we have a Victorian clothing display at the museum.
Okay.
When we clean our homes, we go in attics and trunks. We found Victorian dresses and what black people used to wear. So we got an entire room full of Victorian clothing on display for how black people used to dress, and we have images of them in those kind of clothing. And we have I have a lot of photographs of blacks from the Victorian era there, and we don't know who they are. It's called The Walls of the Unknown.
Oh.
And we always ask people when you come in, if you recognize somebody, let us know, because it could be a family member. We get them out of homes, and the younger generation did not know who they were. All they knew is they were family, so they either sell them to us or donate them. We have them, and I got them in a lot of different rooms, but I think I have some Washington University grad students coming in, and I think I'm gonna have them to set them up and put them in one room and have them all together. But anyway, we have those. Yeah.
You said you didn't have any museum experience when you started your museum.
Right.
What have you learned in terms of putting together a museum?
Okay. Okay, a lot of people ask me that. That's a good question. A lot of people ask me that question. My experience came from when I was an antique dealer, Tom DeVille. He was in Clayton. It was called DeVille Interiors. And I would go to his antique shop looking for black memorabilia. And I got to know him very well. So he was a retired interior decorator. And he said, if you go to Selkirk auction and buy from me, I'll teach you all about antiques and how to decorate and all that. And I did. I bought for him for years. I would go to, because he said when he was a millionaire, and he said when he go bid on stuff at the auction, people bid him up because they know he know good stuff. So I would go there instead of him.
Oh, well.
He was standing on one side of the room, I'm standing on the other side, I'm bidding for him. He tell me to bid, and I would get it, and people would come to me and say, well, who are you buying for? And I said, I'm buying for me. They never knew I was buying for him. I bought for him for many, many years. And even until he retired. When he retired, he moved to California. I went to his retirement party. I was the only black person there. And he told his audience, his friends, he said, I want to teach you, introduce you all to a guy that became better than a master. He never forgot anything I taught him. And so he taught me how to decorate and design. And then a lot of my antique dealers friends throughout the city taught me all about antiques because there was nobody could come to St. Louis and buy black memorabilia unless I didn't want it. You know, they would, because the people who come out of town, they would say, they tell me, well, Calvin get everything we get. And this guy, he said, who is this Calvin guy? And so one day, he said he was going around to all the antique shops and he was being told that. And so one of the antique dealers called me and says, there's a guy here from New York want to meet you. He buys black memorabilia. So I went down to the antique shop, and it was a guy, I knew him. I had met him in New York, and because he was buying, he bought from me. And he said he couldn't buy anything in St. Louis because everybody told him. He said everybody told him I get it, and that was true. The antique dealers made sure that I got the best, and they looked out for me. A lot of them are gone now; they're deceased. But I had a good life teaching. I had a good life in the antique world because I got to know a lot of antique dealers, and that's why I got that museum because they made sure I got the best. And when they got it, they found it. They made sure I got it if I wanted it, and that's why I have it because of them. So I'm standing on their shoulder.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Two quick points. Do you have a chance to talk with anybody that attended Washington Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church in May '63 and '64 when Martin Luther King came to St. Louis?
Yeah, I got pictures of that.
Do you?
Right, yeah, I got pictures of it, because they said a lot of the preachers was afraid to meet with Martin Luther King. They were afraid. And so I got pictures of that. It was taken by Al Lang. Al Lang was a St. Louis photographer. I got all his images, his negatives, and I got pictures that he took of Martin Luther King when he was here during that time. The Washington Tabernacle. Matter of fact, one of my college professors, what's the name when it died? Not Beck or the other one. John Ingram. He was Dr. Ingram was a member of Washington Tabernacle for many, many years, and we always talk about Washington Tabernacle. Yes.
Did you ever have a chance to meet with Frankie Freeman?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Matter of fact, I have my daughter clean out the house. I have a few of her artifacts on display at the museum, but Frankie Freeman wanted her artifacts to go to Harris Stowe, so Chevy is Freeman is her.
He gave a great presentation when she died
Yeah.
at Harris Stowe.
They did. Yeah, I was there.
Are you familiar with Plymouth House in Carswell Village
Yes.
in Vaughan?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Do you know about the rent strike?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we're out.
Yeah.
Any other final questions for this evening?
Okay, you're done.
Well, I've been to the museum and I really recommend everybody go there. In the time I was there, Calvin and his wife, I was just with my wife, gave a personal tour. It was fantastic. And so you're just getting a kind of a
Overview.
Yeah, an overview and just like a concept here. You get to see the real thing at the museum.
And with your personal tour, I have tour guides. I have a lot of retired educators who are tour guides at my museum. And we're on our winter hours now, but usually during the spring, I bring them all back. And we got, last year we were so busy. I mean, we were busy because they had a lot of art stuff going down on St. Louis Avenue, and there were so many people coming to the museum last summer. So we were really, really busy, and we expect the same thing this spring coming back.
Right.
Yes.
Are you closed for now?
No, I'm not close. No,
Okay.
we're open by appointment. I'm pretty much there, but I don't stay there. I'm in and out. So best to call. My wife had a car. You can pass my like. My wife had cars for the museum, and it's best to call and make sure I'm there because I'm usually there, but I'm in and out.
Okay.
All right.
Let's give it to her.
Do you come and speak to like a senior groups?
I do. I do.
Oh, you've already got.
Okay.
Well, I'll pass it back.
Any other final questions or comments, or I'm happy to move to the signing?
They have books here for you to, if you'd like to purchase Black St. Louis book, and I will sign it. I would order it for you if you get a book. I'll sit right here. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Nice talking to you.
Oh, thanks.
I can do it again.